Picking things up right from Deku Tree, we're going to be continuing to explore and see what items are available. Deku Tree actually has quite a few number of items in it. 2 chests to be checked in the slingshot room. Two more chests to look through here in the compass room. Unfortunately, the chests in Deku Tree didn't really contain very useful items. Ferris Wind is not very useful for actually doing anything, and Kojiro is unfortunately already been given out in a hint that it is a junk check. Another remains is going to be required to access Majora's on the moon. Returning back to Gerudo Training Grounds, everything in Gerudo Training Grounds should be accessible now with the equipment I have and songs that I have. Be doing a run through, grabbing the keys on the way. There are 9 keys in Gerudo Training Grounds vanilla. Unfortunately, not a very useful reward. Gerudo Training Grounds did not have very much in it. Making my way through Fortress's exterior, sewers, and interior. Unfortunately, nothing of significance has been found and will not be found in Pirate Fortress. Came to the realization that I had not yet confronted Skull Kid on the clock tower roof. It's important that I do so because he's got a song check. And Sonata of Awakening is going to be required to access Woodfall Temple. However, I do not have Deku Mask yet, and that's going to be a requirement. Decided to progress the Cafe and Anju storyline to get some rewards from that. Fortunately, I don't believe any of these rewards are required as well, though Silver Skill was obtained, which can be a little bit of a convenience in Ocarina of Time for moving across Lake Hylia to Zora's domain. I had also forgotten previously that I had not completed Job All the Way. I had left the boss alive and waited until I had received a sword. I could have finished the boss fight earlier with Deku Sticks only, since I do have upgrades. But, didn't do that. Kind of forgot. Would have been useful to have remembered this boss earlier. I should have came back to fight him as soon as I got the Kokiri sword. Not just for the fact that his blue warp reward is obviously going to be required, but the heart piece reward from him ended up being a very significant find. And the final transformation mask for Majora's Mask was from this boss fight. And that actually opens up a lot more Majora's Mask. And retrieving the Force Medallion from Jabu Jabu is going to grant me another song here from the pedestal as adult for the prelude check. And that would be the completed Goron's Lullaby, which will now grant me access to Snowhead Temple. Now returning to Deku Palace, after having gotten the Deku Mask, I'm now able to access the interior of Deku Palace, where I went to visit the Bean Salesman in the grotto here. With access to beans, I'm now going to be able to do the upper portion of the palace and get another song check. And it is useful to know that if you do not have any access to bottles or water, that you can use Song of Storms to grow the beans. Unfortunately, this is not the warp song that I need for Ocarina of Time at the moment. I'm still looking for Nocturne to be able to access Shadow Temple. On my way to the Song of Soaring tablet to check another song that's happened to be nearby. Still not the song that I need. Not a very useful song either, but there are a few checks tied to it. And made my way to Woodfall, where I'll be going to Woodfall Temple to complete it. However, on the way here, happened to find Bigoron's Sword. Not a required item, but the damage increase is very useful for Ocarina of Time, just to speed some things up. Spring Bloodfall Temple. I do have access to go straight for the boss reward right away, but I won't be doing that because I do know that I have a hint that there is another required item here. Well, the item I'm looking for here is the captain's hat. This room is the final check for Woodfall Temple, which happens to have the item I needed. I'm going to need Captain's Hat to access the graves in the Icona Graveyard, one of which will have a song check in it. And here I am killing the bows in the dark room for the last chest, which has the boss key. An item that I actually did not need to go and get, because I had just remembered that with Aldalwo's remains in my inventory, I have access to the boss warp. So I can just soar back to the start of the dungeon and just go straight to the boss from here. And with Fierce Deity Mask, the boss fight will be very short. It's important to remember in this seed that I'm going to need to collect all 3 of the spiritual stones to access a song in Hyrule Field for the Song of Time check, which is going to be required to get access to Great Bay Temple. For instance, I do find the letter to Mama from the cafe questline in here. There are 2 checks tied to this, but since I found it in a foolish location, I know that those checks will not have any required items, so I will not be pursuing any of those checks later on. Here in the Pillars room, after having just defeated the freezers in here and opening the door for the Goron switch, I was able to get the boss key chest from killing the freezers in here. This is the only item I actually needed to collect here in Snowhead Temple. With the boss key in hand, I can now access the goat fight. Again, knowing that the location is foolish, the boss heart piece reward is not going to be required. The ocean title deed will not need to be traded because the reward will be junk. Oh, got Majora'sMask. Not a useful item at this point. With the third spiritual stone in hand, we'll be returning to Ocarina of Time. Be going out here into Hyrule Field to check the moat. This is where the Ocarina of Time would be, as well as where you will get Song of Time in the vanilla game. And with Bossa Nova in hand and Majora'sMask, I'll have access to the Great Bay Temple. Since I know that the Captain's Hat is a required item, I've returned to the Icona Graveyard in order to check the graves. I'm here in the Night 1 grave because this is where the song check is. This was the correct grave to check, getting access to Nocturne, which I've needed for quite a bit in Ocarina of Time to get Shadow Temple access. Though Shadow Temple will not really move very far until I get Hover Boots. Hover Boots is going to be quite a bit of a blocker here. I've decided to take some chances in Shadow Temple to check some of the early access checks that I can get to. Unfortunately, it's only about 2 without Hover Boots, but I was hoping that they might have been in here. Bit of a spoiler, but Hover Boots were not in here. Instead, I gained access to my first small key for Shadow Temple, but I won't be able to use this since I cannot cross the chasm in the main lobby. It will be some time before I return. Spent about 40 minutes doing overworld checks to no avail. Since I was unable to find Hover Boots to progress some of the other areas, I decided to come here to Great Bay Temple. Great Bay Temple was also a foolish dungeon, so I will not be doing any access checks in here. And since I do have Georg's remains already, I'm just going to be going straight to the boss fight. At some angles, this boss could be a bit finicky to hit with the Fierce Deity's ranged attacks. I was hoping to catch him while he was moving forward. Didn't quite go so well. With the big fish dead, I am able to claim the Spirit Medallion. With Shadow and Spirit Medallion in hand, I am now able to go back to Temple of Time and do the light arrows check. Before making my way to the Temple of Time, I decided to do some more checks around Great Bay Coast. Here in the Ocean Spider House, I did have one chest here that I did not get access to until I got the Captain's Hat. And now making my way back to Temple of Time for the light arrows check, which was unfortunately just a piece of heart and nothing useful. About 30 more minutes of exploring overworld checks and doing some of the lingering checks from some of the dungeons in an attempt to find the major progress blocker, which has been hover boots. Fortunately, only found Mask of Truth here, but turns out Mask of Truth is actually going to be very important in this run. After going through a few more overworld checks, since I did get Mask of Truth recently, I decided to come by the doggy racetrack in Romani Ranch. In this randomizer, if you have Mask of Truth, the gold dog is guaranteed to win the race. And so, Mask of Truth led me to my major progression blocker, the hover boots. Hover boots in hand, this now leads me into Shadow Temple, where I'll be able to make more progress. Throughout here, I will be collecting these small keys, though there is a bit of a diversion I make that may have almost soft-locked the seed, and I'll get into that later. So there is a skip I'm going to be doing that the randomizer does not account for. If I had done some things in the wrong order, I think I could have potentially softlocked myself in this seed. I do not recommend doing this skip unless you absolutely know for sure that there's nothing in Shadow Temple that you need, or that you have access to all of the keys. Here in the Curtain Spikes room, I gained access to the boss key, believing that this is all I needed to finish the remainder of the seed. I'm going to go ahead and skip the rest of Shadow Temple, which at the time was a good idea. I ended up second guessing myself. Turns out that what I'm about to do is perfectly fine, but when I get to Ganon's castle, I'm going to end up second guessing myself, believing that Ganon's castle had a boss key. I forgot that in this preset there is no boss key. This is going to lead me on a wild goose chase. And here I'm going to perform a skip that gets you through the gate here to access the Shadow Temple boat. Again, since the randomizer does not account for this skip, I do not recommend doing it unless you know for sure that there's nothing else you need in Shadow Temple, or that you have access to all of the keys in Shadow Temple. Because if you perform this skip and use your only available key to get access to the boss room, to no other keys are available beyond that point, you will be unable to access any of the remaining locked door portions of the Shadow Temple. If you have a required item in there, you will soft lock your seed. I use my remaining key so that I can get access to the boss fight, not knowing if I would have access to more keys or if I had any more required items in Shadow Temple. Fortunately, I do not, so the skip ended up being perfectly fine, but at a certain point I am going to panic, believing that I had made a mistake. Light Medallion is the final medallion I need to gain access to Ganon's castle. It is at this point that I am actually able to finish the Ganon fight. However, I am going to be going on a wild goose chase, believing that I needed to get the boss key from Ganon's castle, when there is none. Here in Ganon's castle, I'm going to be doing the trials, believing that the Ganon boss key is in one of the checks behind them. This is not going to be the case. Now, even though the beginner preset does not have a boss key for Ganon, you may still need to do checks in Ganon's castle doing these trials, because you may have a required item to complete Majora's Mask in them. This is not the case for this seed that I generated, but it may be for yours or any future seed. It is around this point that I'm about to gaslight myself, since I believe that there is a Ganon boss key to be acquired, and I have yet to find it, and will not find it in the Spirit Trial. I'm going to mistakenly believe that I am going to have to find the Golden Gauntlets to access the Light Trial to find the boss key. I will now be running around the overworld in an attempt to find golden gauntlets, believing that I will need them to gain access to the Ganon boss key that does not exist. Beginner preset does junk some of the more annoying checks to do. The Garrow's Choir heart piece that you will be get in the Springtime Mountain Village is one of those junked checks, so you will not have to go and gather the frogs in Majora's Mask. Making my return to Fire Temple, remembering that Fire Temple is Way of the Hero and that there are a couple of checks left, I thought maybe the Golden Gauntlets would be here. And with the hover boots, I will also have access to the boss fight here, which still has a remains that I need for Majora's Mask, so completing Fire Temple was, of course, still required. And here we return to the room that I was blocked in before. Without access to a small key, I was unable to get into the jail from the left-hand side, but with hover boots, I can actually cross over to the pillar and gain access into this jail room using the hammer switch. Upon checking the jail chest and the Megaton hammer chest, finding out that they are both junked items, I decided to go ahead and just finish the boss fight here. Disappointed that I did not find the golden gauntlets that I actually do not need. And with the completion of the Fire Temple boss, gain access to the final remains, which gives me access to the moon in Majora's Mask and the Majora boss fight. I'm still going to continue looking for golden gauntlets, though. I am going to start panicking. Now that I think I need golden gauntlets, I may have realized around this point that if golden gauntlets are in Shadow Temple, and I performed that skip without making sure I had keys available, that I may have caused a slight problem. I'm going to be checking the rooms connected to the invisible maze in the hopes that one of the small keys got generated further ahead. Because if any remaining keys have been generated within the locked rooms that I had bypassed, I am going to be unable to access those rooms. Fortunately, here in the Shadow Temple boss key room, I was able to find a small key generated pretty deep into the temple. This means I will be able to go back and unlock the doors that I was unable to go through. Remind you that this is all a wild goose chase and that I didn't have to do any of this. But I was relieved to know that I did not soft what I believe to have been a soft lock. I was relieved to see that I was able to gain access to more of the small keys in the dungeon. I've gained enough keys to essentially complete the loop that I bypassed earlier with the skip, which means I did not, in fact, cause any problems in Shadow Temple or cut off any access to the rest of Shadow Temple, and did not, in fact, soft lock the seed. I returned to Big Goron with the eye drops I obtained from Shadow Temple. And I found the mythical golden gauntlets that I had gaslit myself into looking for. I am now going to do the light trial in Ganon's castle, and upon getting through the light trial, I'll become very confused when I do not, in fact, find a boss key. This is the last chest in Ganon's castle, and I am quite a bit confused about finding the poacher's saw. Shortly from now, I am going to realize that I don't need a boss key, and just go straight to Ganon. There's really not much interesting that's going to be said about the Majora fight. Since I do have the Fierce Deity's Mask, this is pretty much just going to be locking on to the boss and spamming the projectiles. Majora defeated, that is both objectives complete and the goal met for this seed. I will be putting the patch file and the spoiler log for this seed in the seed repository of the OOTMM Discord. If you would like to view the log or generate this seed using the patch file in the OOTMM randomizer, feel free to join their Discord and search my name in the seed repository channel, and you should be able to see the list of my posts there. Miran, I will just let the credits run.